Happy New Year. One of the we did not close our office. Our office remained open because I'm even speaking from the same office. I'm in my office seated.
So even after the suspension, you're working in the same capacity?
Yeah. But some donors said, no, don't use our money because, you are in conflict with the government and the law. And things like those. We have many donors who behave like street kids. They run very fast on the side of a guy. That's the biggest problem, because if you are a donor funding governance work, you should know there are consequences out of the funding that you provide.
All right, Sarah, where are you? Let's start with that. Michael, join us. Ariotolizarwa. Let's kickstart the conversation. Kakonge is ready. Yes, Sarah. Elliot. Yes, Elliot. Ariotolizarwa. Let's start with Sarah and also Kakonge as we wait for Mr. Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Romeo and the participants. Good morning. Good morning, my co-panelists. The purpose of convening this meeting is for civil society leaders, both at the national and grassroots levels, to explain the actual work and meaning of civil society, to tell our own story, because we have a situation where people want to define what civil society is, tell the story of what civil society currently is, including calling us, foreign agents, calling us agents of colonialists when we are, when we are citizens exercising our rights given to us by nature of being human beings, but also the Constitution that allows us to participate in our governance, either as individuals or through civic and political organizations. So that is the purpose of this meeting, and I wish to welcome everyone and officially open this meeting.
Indeed. Indeed. A very good morning to you, Sarah Bireete, the ED Center for Constitutional Governance. We also have Kakonge Lee. We also have Michael Aboneka, Elliot Orizarwa. It's good to see you right there. Let's have this conversation on the shrinking civic space in Uganda. Michael is joining us. Good morning, Michael. Can you hear us?
Yes, good morning.
Yes. All right, Michael, we are going to kickstart the conversation largely on the shrinking civic space in Uganda, the roles of civil society, NGOs in advancing the goals of the citizens of this country, the voiceless people of Uganda. Let me kickstart with you, Sarah Bireete, the ED Center for Constitutional Governance, about the actual roles of civil society vis-a-vis NGOs in that regard, in advancing the goals of the citizens of this country. Let's demystify some of the misconceptions surrounding your work. You're not terrorists, because if you are, you would be in jail right now. There's no way a terrorist can be, let scot-free. You can move around and recruit more people. You can go do some shopping. You can't be a terrorist. So let's first talk about the good work you're doing. Let's shine a light to the good work you're doing.
Yeah, part of the work of civil society is to provide platforms for people to participate in their governance. This we do through our organizations that are voluntarily formed and sustained, or through programs that we run with the citizens who are the core of our organizing, to make sure their voice is heard, their wishes and aspirations are heard and expressed and taken care of through decision-making processes, as well as implementation of programs like service delivery. So civil society organizations also work to fight inequality in society. We work to make sure that the powerful are not too powerful to buy off the poor, and the poor are not too desperate to sell themselves to the highest bidder. So we create a balance in society to make sure that everybody can thrive and survive, and we have a just and equitable society. We also work to make sure that the minorities in our society and vulnerable have space for their issues to be taken care of, as well as their rights and freedoms respected and protected. Among the vulnerable people, we have youth, we have women. We have also created new vulnerable categories. Out of COVID pandemic, we saw the situation of distribution of money for most vulnerable people that did not even reach. So in such circumstances, civil society organizations at the grassroots work with Parliament to make sure that there is accountability of the taxpayers' money. We also work to make sure that situations of public debt that is likely to impact more on the poor and vulnerable, because the biggest bearer of a tax burden in less developed countries are the majority poor and vulnerable, and the rich do not feel the pinch of the tax because they have more money that they can dispense with. On the economic side, further, we work to make sure that the gap between the rich and the poor does not widen too much to make inequalities worse. So this is the work of civil society in Uganda and globally. This is the work of civil society. Civil society is also commonly known as the third force. Together with the media and private sector, we provide alternatives, alternative policies, alternative views to what the policymakers are doing to make sure that there is equitable development as well as balanced interests in society. You are muted, Romeo, you are muted.
Sarah, then why are we seeing this concerted effort from the government to actually stop you from doing your work if it's actually rendering great services to the people of Uganda?
Well, the reason we are discussing a shrinking context, and it's not only happening in Uganda, we have an index of shrinking space in several countries released by Civicus, the Global Civicus Office. So Uganda is among the countries where civic space is shrinking or closing. So when you have a context of closing or shrinking civic space, you have a situation where leaders want to dictate their wishes on the people, and they do not want to hear the alternative views, voices, and aspirations of the people. So in this case, civil society finds itself in a situation of war, in trying to bridge the gap between the people and the government, and making sure that governance is driven by the interests, wishes, and views of the people, instead of governance being driven by the wishes and desires of those that hold power. So that's why we are at conflict with government. The people that hold power want their views to prevail against the views and interests of the people. You are muted.
Let me also bring in Kakonge Lee. Kakonge Lee, what do you make of this shrinking space within our country? The fact that government is clamping down on civil society NGOs, 54 of which were actually shut down courtesy of the NGO Bureau. Why is there a concerted effort to push NGOs out of business? In your own perspective, as Kakonge Lee.
Thank you, Romeo. I do not think the problem is really the space for NGOs. The problem is the space for citizens of this country to exercise their rights as enshrined in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. It's not about us, it's about everyone. Where is the space? I was reading on Twitter, someone writing about the disappearance of a member of parliament who had just been released from prison and disappeared at the gate of the prison, whatever. So it's not about us. If you focus on what has been going on over the last 5 to 10 years in the political arena, it speaks a lot. Be it the political space, if you see what happened in the last election, candidates were not allowed to campaign, especially those who are vulnerable, those who are not so rich. Candidates from the opposition could not campaign. You see what happened to Baby Wine and others. The situation is not good. So the situation is really broader than really just us in NGOs. And what we face today is what every other citizen in Uganda is facing. And for me, this is about the regime. It's about the government, the people in leadership wanting to stay longer. People no longer want to be questioned for the things they are doing. Those who are doing wrong things, they don't want to be asked why they are doing wrong things. Those who want to stay longer, they do not want to be questioned why they want to stay longer. We have a regime that has been in office for the last 35, 36 years, and they still want to be counting. So any voice that questions this, that says no return term limits, return age limits, everyone who says this, becomes an enemy of the regime. And so for me, it's not about NGOs. Some of them are very innocent NGOs. There is an organization here in Ushenyi, in a sub-county called in Igara West, actually, where the Minister of Local Government comes from. It is a small organization working with young girls. It was closed. Now, the question is, why would you close a small group working with young girls? This is very small. I think it doesn't even have more than one or two staff. And it was closed. I know of a self-help group amongst the 54 which was closed. It has no influence over many things. They are just there trying to save small coins every Friday, and it was closed. And so you ask the question, what is the problem? For me, the problem is more broader than the space within which NGOs operate. But we will still have to deal with it. I have told people that this is a problem that is with us, and we have to deal with it, whether we want or not. If people decide to quit, then we are letting our country to perish. If we choose to fight on, then probably at some point, we'll be able to overcome some of these challenges we are facing. For me, I think that as citizens of this country, it's our duty. The Constitution gives us that duty under Article 17. Council Sarah talks about Article 17 every time she appears on TV, about our duties and responsibilities as citizens of this country, not just workers of NGOs, but citizens of this country, to defend the Constitution. It is in the Constitution that we have to defend it. So for me, it's not about the...
Kakonge, you froze. Mr. Kakonge, are you still there? Electoral, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It's Lee whose volume has gone out.
Electoral, you're still with us? Electoral is the ED Women and Girl Child Development Association. Can you hear us, Elliot?
I can hear you, Romeo.
Oh, go ahead, Electoral. Talk to us about the shrinking civic space from the perspective of the Women and Girl Child Development Association. Why do you think there's a push coming in from government? We are getting all your thoughts on this subject.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Charity is also on the line.
Okay, I hope my my network is going to be. Yeah, can you hear me, Romeo? Hello. Can you hear me?
Elliot, I can hear you.
Okay, I was waiting for Romeo to give me space. Thank you so much. My name is Elliot Olizara. We work for Women and Girl Child Development Association as one of the founder members. We coordinate the Coalition on Girls Empowerment. And I am happy and proudly to mention that I am the chairperson, Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group. And I want to thank the space and thank CCEDU for bringing me on board to talk about the shrinking space for mainly women and girl children in Uganda. We are all aware that we have a higher percentage of women and girls in the country when you compare the population, though I don't have a specific sector and gender disaggregated data for now. But the story goes unexpectedly that it has not been an easy journey for women and girls, and mainly in organizing in a space that is not free, in a space that we need to ask for permission even to have a talk on girls' concerns.
Yes.
it has not been an easy space that you can't even have a conversation on security for a girl at home and in the community. The journey has not been easy in a way that you can't have even a meeting in the community to talk about the income generation, the income generating activities at household level. And this has not been only today, but from the time I have worked in the communities. I remember one case in time when I was working in a Sekanyonyi, deep Sekanyonyi in Mityana district, where we had a meeting, and then the Gombora chief came to ask us if we deposited money on their accounts, of which it was not easy for us, and therefore it affected the program. So this is far back 2003. So it is still happening, dear members and listeners, that to some extent the women that we work with believe that if government says civil society, you shouldn't come to the community. So they don't even allow to follow you if you say we are going to clean in the market. And one case in point is how we have been running the campaign on sensitizing the market dwellers and mainly the women, the market vendors, on the role of civil society to be able to develop with them the positive narratives. The shrinking space has taken us to find out from the market dwellers that they think we are thieves. They take us, Romeo, your face is not clear. It's like you are saying you are not listening to me.
I'm listening loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the messages that came strongly in the markets where we went, Kasubi, Wakisa, and Nansana, where like they don't understand why civil society come to them and they don't come back, and therefore they agree with the government that we are terrorists. If you come to say we want to do this and you don't go back, then you're a terrorist. Why did you come to us and then you don't come back?
I thought the work of the NGOs is to lend a hand to the government. You come with an initiative, then at some point you hand it over to government for continued implementation. But I believe this is information members of the public do not have. They believe you are going to continuously continue with these projects, not knowing at some point you're supposed to graduate them and give them to government local leaders.
Yeah, Romeo, one thing that we have to put in mind is, yes, the role of civil society is supposed to be working and we have to agree that the work that civil society work is either voluntary or it is a donor engagement. And we do our work depending on the donor trends. If the donors have money for women's economic empowerment, and then as an organization that works on women's rights, I have to go for that fund. And if I come to the community to implement maybe on the women's economic empowerment, which government has a program on as UWEP, Uganda Women's Entrepreneur Program, government may continue in one budget to the second to another budget. But for me, the donor is going to give me money for 6 months, so I may not come back. I may not continue. So sustainability for me becomes hard, but it would be better if the government takes it on. But of which the citizens, some of the citizens seem not to be understanding exactly what it is supposed to be. It is true the role of civil society is to implement government program. But the way government branded us has really affected us during this time. That if you come to the community, it becomes hard for even parents allow you to sit with the children. Let's say one case in mind, if you really want to talk about sexual reproductive health rights, and the parents feel like the government said you shouldn't talk about these things. It should be things that shared within the household. But again, you find that civil society comes in when you know that there are issues that mothers would not share with their girls. And then you find that we have over 20% of girls. Yes,
Elliot, you're telling us that government is stopping you from talking about sexual reproductive health among members of the community.
The sexuality education, Romeo, is part
because
of the sexual,
talk of homosexuality and so forth.
Yeah, it's part of sexual reproductive health rights.
So the government is accusing you of disseminating information on homosexuality, and that's why they're adamant to let you talk about sexuality as a whole. Elliot Odizaro seems to have frozen Sarah Bireete. Let's talk about the impact of this shrinking civic space as Sarah Bireete. The impact.
Okay, but we have Charity and Michael.
Charity is not yet on. I don't see her. Michael is not on. I'm only seeing you. Kakonge has also left.
No, we are online. We are online, but the video is off. We are listening.
Oh, Charity, good morning. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, Romeo.
Wow. Your organization.
Yeah, we're online.
The Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy was one of the organizations that were shut down. And I remember you very well, you made a statement and you said the decision was extremely regrettable. Talk to us about that situation.
Yeah, the situation was extremely regrettable because 2 weeks to the expiry of our permit, we wrote to the NGO Bureau and explained the circumstances we were facing with the Makindye local government in terms of getting our MOU. There is a new requirement that has been sneaked into the regulations, as Sarah will tell you. It's not in the act. She raised it with me when she showed me the act and said, go read this whole act. When I read it, actually in the act, it does not state that the local government should give you an MOU. It is in the regulations. But the regulations are supposed to come out of the act. So where did this regulation of the district giving us an MOU to get a permit become a key requirement? The only reason why we have been stopped and why we have been suspended is because up to now, Makindye has not signed the MOU. And Makindye says they cannot sign that MOU because the DISO and the RDC or the RCC of Makindye are still reviewing a few things around the organization. Now you see a proper witch hunt. Indeed. What is it that you're reviewing that cannot end? We allowed them to come to office. We allowed them to meet our board of directors. We allowed them to get all the information they wanted. They wanted to know who are your friends, who are your relatives. Can you imagine a tool that asks things that are basically ultra vires as that? Because they're saying when we ask about your friends, we know who you are. Really? So it is those circumstances that made me say it was extremely regrettable because as an organization, we believe in living according to the rule of law, okay? So if the law of the land is telling us that we must register, then we believe in that as an organization. And so we tried our best, but the circumstances couldn't allow us. So what have we done? We've been having lobby meetings with the NGO Bureau, but we have also had conversations with our fellow civil society organizations, and surely a course of action is being taken.
Well, we did see in 2016 the death of Mr. Medikagwa, the chairperson of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. That would have been a state agency that was going to offer oversight within this 2020-2021 election. But then what we did see was government dilly-dallying the issue when it comes to the institution of the leadership of the Uganda Human Rights Commission. Since there was no leadership, it meant the tribunal could not sit, they could not investigate and bring those culprits to book during the campaigns. You did see what happened in November. So Uganda Human Rights Commission couldn't sit. They couldn't actually expedite the tribunals or bring the perpetrators to book. Who killed the people in November? Where were they keeping them? In the safe houses. So all this government could not do using its arm, the Uganda Human Rights Commission. That's where you came in. That's where you would have come in as members of civil society, NGOs. But then even government was clamping down on your same NGOs at the time. So do you think this was a concerted effort for government to ensure that we hold this election or we go through this political season with Ugandans in the dark?
I think that the new Electoral Commission did not understand the mandate of the citizen in an election. I think that as much as we talk about stereotypes of where we say that the government is suspicious of citizens, the Electoral Commission really played that role very, very significantly in the 2021 election. Because one of the key issues the NGO Bureau has raised with CCEDU has been the question of go back to the Electoral Commission and explain to them why you wrote a report about the election. Ordinarily, we should write about the election because we are citizens. Article 38 of the Constitution says we should participate in the governance of our country. We are Ugandans as much as the Electoral Commission, whoever they are, commissioners, are Ugandans. So we feel so much entitled to talking about the election in which we participated because the citizenry participated there as voters. They participated there as people who are observing what was happening during the processes. So it's not that this observation thing, the way they have taken it in the law says you must apply to be an observer.
Yes.
But as a citizen, you can observe something. You can observe that in your community, there are killers, there are murderers in massacre. It is the community that has observed that. So you can use your Article 38 to observe, to see, basically, okulaba, to see what is going on around your community and you alert about it. So when you extrapolate it to mean that a citizen should not see what has happened around them, then indeed it looked like in this election, citizens were not supposed to participate. Citizens were not supposed to say anything. Everything that the Electoral Commission was saying was right. And moreover, what we wrote in our report, we picked the data from the Electoral Commission website. Everything we analyzed, everything we stated was picked from the data they had collected. So what was our fault? Where was the problem? Because if you're saying these are the results, and for us, we have analyzed for you the results to tell you in every district, this is how people voted, and this is what it therefore means. And the citizen understands now that, oh, so the Electoral Commission can actually make such a foul story. Then it's not our fault. We are just playing the role of a watchdog. And you can therefore not continue to victimize organizations and witch hunt them and say people there are they're saboteurs, they are foreign agents, they want to bring down government. We don't want to bring down government. We want a better democracy that works for Ugandans.
Well, Sarah Bireete, you can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Now, Sarah, we were largely banking on the support of these local monitoring groups, actually offer oversight on what was happening during the election. But government ensured that that doesn't happen because the EU had already unequivocally said we are not coming to Uganda, because government had not put some of the recommendations that they had aired out. Many of the other foreign monitoring groups were not given clearance to come to Uganda. So we were largely banking on these local monitoring groups and NGOs who were doing some groundwork, who have continued to be pushed farther into the corner by the government. Let me tell you something, Sarah Bireete, 2026 is not too far. We're going to enter 2026. Aren't you worried that we might enter this election without local monitoring groups, without any kind of oversight, both on the ground and internationally, to oversee this forthcoming election?
Well, I know there has been an informal decision taken to extremely frustrate or close governance NGOs because some people are tired of the noise. They are tired of being called out to account. They are tired of being questioned about human rights violations. They are, they don't want, and in that decision, it was said that NGOs, if they want to exist, they should promote economic empowerment of the people, but not making noise about human rights and accountability and other issues. So if you, based on that background, as much as it was an informal decision, if you connect with what is happening, in the last election, civil society members were arrested on voting day while observing elections.
Charity and the group.
Yes, and a rumor was created that civil society was studying elections, and they intentionally mistook the data center for collection of election observer data and tabulation as an Atari center for announcing elections. People were arrested. They are still reporting on bail since January. About 28 civil society leaders and data clerks. These organizations had accreditation by Electoral Commission. Electoral Commission first denied their accreditation. Later they confirmed, I think after 2 days. So if you take these two narratives, you see a deliberate intention to make sure, to make sure that there will be no meaningful observation of elections by local actors. But also the manner in which the international election observers were treated was not any different. We saw some agencies pulling out, including the US, to accredit their staff that would EU had a lukewarm observation, diplomatic exchange that of people who are comfortable, and it is a worrying trend. Article 17, every voter can observe, they have seen their spaces, a formal election observation everywhere.
And I see. Main end game here, because some are monitoring groups ahead of this election, but then why an election? Is it because they wanted to set it, and many of these NGOs you were writing reports come out?
Well, campaign for 2020 exchanges on Twitter, you can see. So
yes, management of the 2021 election actually working in these spheres of governance and accountability reports.
The dots of all that happened during elections, observation, the democratic governance facility, just before they had started. Actually, when the first frozen, that is the National NGO Forum freeze ACFIM accounts, monitoring. So when passing money to these networks, and the NGO Forum coordinates all women NGOs, and coordinates the of elections. Immediately making financial disbursements.
Yes.
When money comes to the account, it bounces back. It was frozen there. So that's how the allegation of money for terrorism was coined election observation 17 of the Constitution. They closed these accounts for
if it was constitutional
of election work. They closed DGF. And up to today, direct effort of the regional civil society work and
the legal perspective to the challenging interview or Zoom session, 54 NGOs, the freezing of the unit in that regard. Was it constitutional to begin with? What government has been doing to the NGOs?
And it's not different from Tom and Jerry. It's called ping pong. Give them registration certificate. You, the same government, do that. You are terrorists. They file returns every year. Tomorrow, you're saying, oh, by the foreign interest. So I find this something that you see a regime has to survive those in power. Those are the two major points. On the point of whether it's power, because
I see.
Because economically, if all NGOs close, fuel stations want to get money, is that civil society, but it is a voice, an alternative money to do the work we are doing. The work of NGOs is not local. That's where see Romeo, see work that will ultimately change the work, whether legal or not. Sarah talked about the cases were close to, I think since January it is. If there's no charge, such as observing elections, but this is what people, because that offense is nowhere under Article 17, but also be part of their affairs. Now, discussions on this, and I was asking, first of all, you have a problem is the decisions that come out of are they for the ED, are they for Ahimbisibwe?
Do you feel the hand of the bureau?
Not even feeling the hand.
Because he was annexed with the democratic governance facility. I do not like the board of this DGF facility, but it's really just
came online. I was reading Federal Minister to. It was closed down to citizens. Exactly. So they said, they actually took their idea.
Yes.
Now, and they are saying, okay, pretense. And for me, I hate pretense. You give money, I give you my money. The payee and all the money we pay, but you're saboteurs. But we understand all laws, or we've gone to court several times. And what kind of rulings come out of court? Move to shrink space.
And my brother, Michael Aboneka, or Pio Nicholas, grapple with those charges. The DPP would saying that this man was charged with money laundering and so forth.
Exactly.
So this is a concern.
through the payee and all the money we pay. And then on the other hand, you're saying you guys are bad, you're saboteurs. But we understand that this is the kind of regime. They will disregard all laws, or they use the laws to do whatever they want. We've gone to court several times with CCG and all the rest, and you can't even understand what kind of rulings come out of court. But it's part of a calculated move to shrink space. You use the law.
Do you think this is a concerted witch hunt, my brother Michael Aboneka? You did have the Chapter 4 ED, Executive Director, Mr. Opio Nicholas, grapple with those charges. The DPP would later drop the same charges after calling this young man, saying that this young man was charged with money laundering and so forth. So this is a concerted witch hunt. Exactly.
And actually, I was disappointed. Of course, people were celebrating in terms of the withdrawal of the case, but I felt disappointed. Reason? Why? I wanted the state to say that we have all the evidence, and here is the evidence, and let us go to court and prosecute. If it is true that Nicholas or Chapter 4 were involved in money laundering, then we should see the evidence. Okay? So, and these things happen every day. They arrest you and investigate later, which is actually unconstitutional. And like I've told you, they will disregard that. The case will be withdrawn. You file a case for imprisonment and whatever, and then you will be compensated, but they will not care. So for me, the point is that the witch hunt won't stop, because like I told you, their major role is consolidate and maintain in power. So whoever is speaking against, it's a problem. And I don't understand why we live in a country where dissent isn't respected. I would expect that after 35 years of power, people understood that actually democracy means...
Kakonge, get ready.
Yeah, so I think that we just pretending. They either say, guys, stop completely what you're doing and we move on, or you can't have it. We can't have warm and lukewarm and all this kind of stuff. So that's why I look at it in that sense. But again, lastly, is that the NGOs, the civil society sector, they have continued to build resilience, and which is a good thing. Because if you're doing a legitimate work, like Kakonge is saying, if I'm doing a legitimate work and I have a permit, I have a registration, and you're saying you're closing me because I didn't file returns, it is silly actually administratively.
Indeed,
so I think that we need not to keep quiet. We have to fight for our space. And then we show people that actually what we are doing is the right thing. As long as it is right, it doesn't care. As long as it is right and legal, it doesn't care how you feel about it. So that's what
Michael Aboneka, thank you very much for that very, very intelligent submission. Mr. Kakonge, you have this regime, the National Resistance Movement, that came into power, ushering in peace, in their own terms. They say they ushered in peace, they ushered in democracy, but what you are seeing right now, they clamp down on civil society and anyone who is in the spheres of accountability and governance. Wouldn't you say that they are actually contradicting themselves on this issue, peace and democracy?
It's true, they ushered in what they said they did. That is not we are not contesting that, but
is it being reflected right now?
No, because things have changed. I think from sometime in 2016, if you saw how Shiza campaigned, he was in handcuffs like this, you would see a lot of change. What they call fundamental change in the wrong direction. In 2011, it happened after the election, walk to work. People were annoyed. Even with the outcome of the election, people went to court, and you know what court did. So in 2016, we also know what happened. And in 2021, by the way, after 2016, they still talk about, and it did. In 2017, NGOs, Action Aid, and others were closed. We were here and we were watching, and we complained, and not so much was done. Later, they were opened with no explanation. In 2017, by the way, personally, I went to prison on murder and spent 2 days there after defeating the local government here in court. And they were not happy. They sent me to prison. I spent there 2 days until the community said, no, that cannot happen. In 2020, you saw our, like Sarah said, our platforms being closed. NGO, which we had established as a vehicle for observing the election, was closed in November, December there after its launch. No sooner had it been born really than it got closed. In same time, 2021, at the beginning of the year, we had asked for accreditation from the Electoral Commission. We were not accredited to observe the election, and therefore we could not even publish observation reports, because these guys in the government claim if you are not accredited, so you cannot publish a report for accreditation. All those actions within civil society demonstrate the fact that the space is getting squeezed. I even don't know whether we'll make it 2026. I think by 2026, most of us NGOs doing governance-related work, doing human rights work, promoting democracy and good governance will have closed. They will either close you forcefully, or they will take you to prison and you will not be speaking the way we are speaking. Even online presence will be squeezed, will not be even allowed to speak online. And so the situation will get worse. It will get worse and worse. Like people said before, it gets better.
Yes.
And for me, I think the process of nation building is always work in progress.
Yes.
We cannot sit and complain. It's our duty to make sure that these things are happening, things are working the way we would want them to work. The problem I have is our parliament. Parliament represents the people, but I think they have also become fused into the state. You like when these things came on 20th, when the government suspended the work of 54 NGOs, I've not seen people in parliament talk about it, and that is a very big problem. In the past, we have seen parliament come out to make statements, to ask the leader of government business in parliament to explain why these things are happening. I have not seen a statement in parliament condemning, for example, the suspension or halting of operations of NGOs. And so the voice that
seems like you're on your own.
Yes, because now we have to speak on your own. They are not with us. They are no longer with us. They are no longer for us. They are on our own. And I don't know how this is going to end. We are more resilient. We are going to be fighting war. We are going to be organizing as many Ugandans as we can, for as long as we continue to speak, to make sure that we stand up against this kind of injustice and impunity.
Aren't you worried that when we mobilize, we might end up in the same situation like what happened in November of 2020, when supporters were picketing at that time and we saw the heavy-handedness of our machinery, or more than 54 people were killed? Mr. Kakonge, it seems like there is political intolerance within this country, but then we do know if there is democracy, it has to move hand in hand with political tolerance.
Yes, political intolerance is growing, and the extremism is growing, by the way. People and radicalization is also growing. If you see the behavior, if you go on social media, if you talk you say something, for example, about the government, you see how many people will come to insult you and abuse you. But you
political
see, let me tell you, we cannot sit back and say, talk about this thing, or you can't do something. We must do something. Even the same government that we have today went to the bush sometime in the 1980s, at the beginning of the 1980s, they went to the bush because there was a problem. Yes, for us, we will not go to the bush, but we will use the laws, we will use the constitution. Even if you choose to say nothing, they will still look for you. You just look at how many people are wallowing in poverty in the countryside. What have they said? You see how many children our children are at home. In the countries outside, in the region, children are going to school.
So when you get ready.
Yes, why are our children home? We have a curfew now. Why do we have curfew? To do what? I have argued, and many people have argued in many places, that curfew is a political weapon, trying to silence the opposition. Because you see, after the January-February elections, they didn't want people moving around challenging the election. And so you have to have a curfew moving on for as long as you want it, for as long as it helps you to control the population from, asking questions, from taking action and many other things. So for me, It's not really about whether I am going to be closed, whether this office is going to be open or closed. It's about the small actions, even big actions that we are going to take to make sure that our country returns to the right democratic path. It will be painful. Some people will die. Some will be in prison, but we will have to do it. I think we must do it.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kakonge Lee. Sophie Chagulanyi is also on the line. We would like to talk about the people who have been working in the areas of governance and accountability. Sophie, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
You are working in the spheres of governance and accountability, Sophie, and the NGOs within these spheres have seen a lot of resistance coming in from government. From your perspective, would like to know, why is there resistance towards NGOs or civil society organizations that are covering these spheres of governance and accountability? Why is government so critical of these two?
I think for me, the issue we are dealing with is actually much more broader. We are dealing with an issue where we see high-handedness on all spheres. The different things that are being used give us this high-handedness. When you look at it from a legal, social, security, and political perspectives, you actually find that it's actually bigger than what we are talking about today. It's more than NGOs or civil society. I'll give you just one example.
Go ahead.
If you look at the industry, the arts industry is an industry that allows information to flow, and that flow of information allows conscientization at individual level, depending on what information you're receiving and information feed. And the more you're conscientized, the more you are as a citizen able to appreciate what you should take part in and act upon. So if you have this industry non-functional or not ably functioning and giving you information, you disconnected an information feed for particular individuals in this country. I think we need to take a much more deeper look to what is exactly happening in this industry. And beyond that industry, I would bring in the media itself. If you look at the last 5 years, the shortest period, if I can use that, the different restrictions that have been happening in that space have given us today a media that is highly restricted. They are selective on what issues they talk about, what they cover. It's highly commercialized. Of course, it was commercialized before, but now it's more commercialized. They go for all that will give them money. It's not about stories that will pass on information to citizens, make them conscientized. You know, so you find that
in a nutshell, government is controlling the narrative that is coming in, even from the media.
Absolutely, not only controlling, but silencing critical voices, silencing, trying to cut the information feed to this information to citizens.
So meaning it's not only you, the NGOs. Meaning it's not only you, the NGOs. It's not only the civil society. It's so many groups. As long as you are in the spheres of information dissemination, the government machinery is coming for you.
Absolutely, because the idea is to stop this information to get to citizens. When you look at the current situation of education and you look at who is actually affected by the fact that education is not strongly, is not on the level it would be happening if it wasn't for COVID. See, you find that the generation, at least 4 generations of those who are between 15 and maybe 22, 23, are highly affected. With this, it will be difficult for us to organize as citizens, but also for us to organize as groups of people, either through our associations, community groups, or whatever we want to organize under. It will be absolutely difficult because we don't have information. So for me, that's the angle upon which I will pitch our conversation today. And while we may say that on a legal perspective, there have been gaps at different levels, there are gaps actually all levels. There are gaps at the bureau level, there are gaps at our level as organizations and associations of people. There are gaps even with government itself because it's no longer the rule of law, it's more the rule by. So you find that even the legal bit is not helping, even gaps at court itself that is supposed to interpret these laws. So that is not helping at all. So the question would be, going to offer us solutions at the moment? Maybe no, those are not there. Solutions continue to be with the people without organizing. What kind of cannot be a solution anywhere. And even if you choose economic empowerment and economic development, it will be difficult for you to maximum utilize that as an approach and get people out of this whole conundrum as a country.
Indeed.
You need to organize at all levels, socially, economically, and politically. You cannot cut off one stream and the other to be functional. No matter how much money people will have, if they cannot function in a politically stable environment, money will not be helpful to them. The development will not be helpful to them. They need this as a general approach to be able to live a successful life. For me, that is the perspective I want us to look at things.
And it's definitely a great perspective, Sophie. But then the viewer or the participants who are actually following this session, the global citizens would wonder and ask the $64,000 question, Sophie. Why would a government that cares for her people keep them in the dark?
You're putting a question in an answer. Does the government care for its people? Because if I care for you, there's no reason why I wouldn't give you information on what I am doing as the government. I would largely be happy if you have all the information, because you're going to use it to really understand what I am doing. So the question is, does the care really exist? Is it really care or reflected in the government? And if you want to unpack your care, your so-called care, ask yourself who is benefiting, who has the meal at the end of the day, and who cares when I don't have a meal, me as an ordinary citizen. That's when you really understand who is the cared for and who is not cared for. The cared is those that actually have. They have not are not catered for, because everyone would now be wondering why children are not in school. The children of the so many are not in school. So everyone would actually be happy about that. If we really cared for our Uganda and our Uganda, we would be unhappy. But some of us are not unhappy, others are happy. They are not bothered about what is happening to the general population that is not going to school. That's the issue. So it's not really care, but for the few.
Yeah. Elliot Orizaro, are you still with me? Elliot Orizaro, yes, very good morning once again. Yes, Kakonge mentioned something, and he said, as we veer to 2026, there is a situation that shall culminate where NGOs might actually be non-existent based on the clampdown, forceful clampdown that we are seeing right now, the heavy-handedness meted out on the NGOs. Now, a callous development took center stage within this election that was just concluded. 8 million women and million women and more did not vote in this election that was just concluded. And people like you who are working in those spheres trying to acquaint these women with the information they needed to participate were largely under pressure from the central government as it is. And you still continue to be under pressure. Do you believe we might end up in a situation in 2026 whereby more women and even more men refuse to go to the polls because of the unfair electoral process?
Oh, thank you so much, Romeo, and thank you so much, Sophie. Sophie, I thought Sophie was still concluding, Romeo, and I thought you thought I was not listening, and you pulled me off.
Yes.
I don't want to anticipate beyond Kakonge's, but I was one of the facilitators of the voters for women and the youth in some districts. And one district in point was Isingiro. And the biggest question definitely was fear. That was the biggest question, and of which I think 2026 may also happen. And if you really asked 1, 2, 3 women, the biggest answer would be, why should I vote? Because the mind still thinks that the president, that President Museveni is going to be the president again in 2026. Then women feel like they shouldn't come out of their homes to go and vote. But it does not mean that we may have a fear for now. But because there are trends, things change, and it depends on the civic education that we really take on the ground.
But since you're
and
not,
the most important thing, I think Sarah can agree with me, even Aboneka and Kakonge, not only civic education should not only come when it is 3 days to the voting days. It should start now. We have to prepare women. We have to prepare the youth that voting is a right and they have a right to vote. I had Mike saying that he does not pretend. Michael, I used not to pretend, but I am learning how to pretend because of failing to fight the political fear. If I go to the community and start, I don't know, my internet is a little bit bad.
We shall
if I go to the
that.
community right now and start saying that you have a right to vote, you have to vote the person that is of your interest, and then hey, they ask me why. The other time I mentioned when we were running the campaign of the Black Monday, and then our organization was blacklisted in WACSOF. Like that is an organization that is against government, but this is a campaign on corruption. The same thing happens. For me, I think going forward, the issue of organizing the civic education should be now. And I don't want us to take it that the government will shut us up. The shrinking space is becoming more shrinked than before. But yesterday someone said it depends on how we want to engage with them. There are some people who are interested in lobbying, and there are some people who are interested in having a round table discussions. So for me, I would suggest that the organizations that work on governance and accountability should go on to create space. There is a time we had a big conversation on creating space, and creating space meaning that we start from the local level. The good thing we are going to be, civil society is supposed to be implementing the parish model with government. And I think this is the time that we have to create space from the local level, then to the national level. And I remember Charity mentioning
Sarah,
the
get
issue.
ready.
Yeah, I remember, I think Mike talking about the issue of people paying taxes and people paying taxes, people paying for the permit. I think the biggest issue we have to fight is the issue of not saying the truth. If we really pay as you earn, and we know this, and where we are saying that the level of debt is high, where we are saying that our budgets are ever in deficit, and then the government is coming to say, lockdown, shut down the DGF, the civil society, DGF, where we have the biggest basket that comes to NGO. It becomes hard because to me, I think even when DGF is giving money to civil society, it is still increasing on the number of tourists that are coming to Uganda, because we have international experts that they come to Uganda and they bring more, meaning that we are increasing on our revenue. So if we keep quiet again, it will not work. But as I conclude, Romeo,
yes, Elliot.
On the fear of 2026 women not coming to vote, I think for me it shouldn't be a very big concern.
Wow, you froze on the most important statement. Fear shouldn't be a big concern. Elliot Orizaro, are you still there? I want to hear what you have to say. As you get ready, Sarah Bireete. She froze. Sarah Bireete, we are talking about the fear that culminated in the 2020-2021 election. Many women did not show up to the polls.
For now.
8 million
but our
majority.
concern is how are we going to work with government education now?
All right, thank you very much, Elliot Orizaro. But you were saying we shouldn't be too much concerned with the fear. Then you broke.
Yes.
Why?
I'm saying that the most important thing for now as civil society is organizing on how we are going to create space from different regions and from different policymakers. And I was talking of the levels. I was talking of the levels because I had mentioned the concern of the parish model, where different people, where women are going to be coming in, and then we have to create space of how we are going to continue engaging.
And then you did mention that fear shouldn't be a concern ahead of 2026. Why? It was really important.
Because if I said it shouldn't be a fear if we start, if we start organizing now, not waiting for 2026. The problem is we coming to do civic education when it's almost like 1 week to the voting days.
All right, thank you very much, Elliot Orizarwa.
But if
Sarah
we start
Bireete.
now, then it means we are going to.
All right. Sarah Bireete, do you think the concerted effort to push NGOs out is actually a move by government to waste the time of the NGOs so that you grapple in the courts of law, you grapple with the closure of your NGOs, you grapple with all these other administrative issues, and you're not focusing on your groundwork, which is disseminating civic education amongst Ugandans to get ready for the next election, which is 2026. Elliot Orizarwa says we should start now, but how are you going to even start if there is a continued clampdown on your NGOs that is taking center stage? Do you think all this is a machination here to waste time or for the civil society from doing meaningful work ahead of the 2026 election?
Actually, civil society organizations today, under the current legal framework, report to 6 agencies. We report to the NGO Bureau, report to Financial Intelligence Authority, report to Uganda Revenue Authority, KCCA, NSSF, and the Uganda Registration Services Bureau. These are 6 agencies that we must report to every year, including our quarterly reports to our partners. So we spend about 70% of our time reporting, other than doing work that we are supposed to do, as we highlighted at the beginning of this conversation. So the burdensome administrative measures alone shrink civic space in the context that you waste time reporting, and after you report, these agencies come to office to verify, so they waste more of your time. And that is intentional, because which other sector reports to multiple bodies like NGOs?
Go ahead, Sarah.
So apart from that, then you have the circulars being sent to RDCs.
Yes.
Make sure civil society doesn't do this. Make sure civil society does this. So even when you go to the field, you waste about 2 days trying to report to the local agencies before you can even conduct your activity. How many activities can you conduct in a year?
Yes, sir.
They just make you tired. They stretch you to make sure they waste time, and you cannot.
I'm going to be out by 11. Yes, Sarah, go ahead.
Yes, so that alone shrinks the space. In the build-up to 2026,
yes,
Uganda is likely to have COVID measures in place even way beyond COVID is gone. We know that COVID is here with us, but in the absence of Section 8 of Public Order Management Act, even when COVID goes away, this regime is likely to keep the restrictions on numbers, the restrictions on association generally, and assembly, saying they are preventing a wave that does not exist in the build-up to 2026 election.
COVID-19 was simply an added advantage. Even in the wake of COVID-19 being absent, government would have continued, you're saying, with this clampdown we are seeing, and the restrictions.
Even when we get herd immunity through immunization, to know that the shrinking civic space in this country is deliberate, we shall continue with the restrictions, even after we have immunized the required categories. As the government, occupies the space that Section 8 of the Public Order Management Act used to occupy, to frustrate freedom of assembly. So the acts that take away citizens' space to engage in their governance, they are intentional, they are designed by this, the regime to make sure that nobody reaches the citizens, to empower them through access to information, knowledge and skills to effectively participate in their governance, including elections. It's a design.
All right. That is Sarah Bireete saying it is a deliberate effort to actually curtail the activities of the NGOs vis-a-vis civil society when it comes to advancing civic education amongst the people within this country, the voiceless, if you will. The ED of the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy, Charity Ahimbisibwe, is with us. Many of whom have continued with their operations, despite the fact that the NGO Bureau actually shut down their operations. Even Kakonge was telling me, even though his organization was shut down, he has continued to operate in that regard. Charity, let's continue. We are worried because this election saw more than 8 million people actually not go to the polls because of fear, majority of whom were women. Aren't you also worried that with the shrinking civic space in 2021 moving forward will actually widen or increase the number or the margin of people who are not going to be going to the polls? And if government is clamping down on the NGOs who are actually ensuring that more people go to the polls, is it to the advantage of government? Does government benefit when fewer people go to the polls?
Let me start with the last one.
Yes.
Aren't I worried that the numbers keep dwindling? I am worried. 2, is it true that government benefits when less people vote? It doesn't. The reason why government does not benefit when less people vote, it means that less of the citizens understand what government is doing for them. They don't even understand what the rationale for paying taxes is, and so the tax base continues to be small. Now, what we are seeing right now happening is a disease that has been caused by government itself. It continues to tie itself with its own actions. For example, the unemployment rate still stands at 70%. NGOs are here providing an opportunity for people to be employed. They provide opportunity for innovation. They provide opportunity for people to contribute to policy and to contribute to National Development Program 3 and to contribute to sustainable development goals. But you make them go round in circles that they can no longer focus on the national development goals. There's a project we've been running on planting trees, for example, that we're planting trees to ensure that Uganda keeps green. You just cross here to Tanzania and see how they're looking very good with their green. Cross to Nairobi and see how cold it is because they have a lot of trees around them.
Kakonge, get ready. Go ahead.
Cross to South Africa and see how beautiful their cities look. But Uganda cannot transform itself because we are being taken on a roller coaster of a cycle of things that are useless, and we shift our eyes from the total focus. So if you have less people voting, you have less people understanding governance issues, you have less people being committed to their government and being committed to the issues that concern them on a daily basis.
Charity, then why is government clamping down on the individuals, NGOs and civil society organizations that are trying to actually enlighten people in this sphere so that they could come out and vote if it is good work and it helps the government?
Yeah, so that is because of the misunderstanding from government and also the lack of information from government operatives who think they are helping their country when they are sinking the country into an abyss. It is important to understand that democracy is a struggle for space. And so civil societies will continue to push back. Citizens individually will push back. Even if civil society is silenced and taken out of the picture completely, we saw that happening in Egypt. The citizens took it in their hands. We saw it happening in South Sudan. The citizens stood up on their own feet and said, no, enough is enough. We have seen it happening in Accra, Guinea. It's because the more you sink people into an abyss, the more they think, how do we get out of here?
Do you also anticipate the same situation to befall Uganda because Ugandans might rise up because of the disenfranchisement that has taken center stage? Your sound has gone off. Your sound has gone off. Charity Hassan has gone up, but we shall get back to her. She mentioned something about mass revolutions that were taking center stage in many other jurisdictions. And she was saying if we do not provide an inclusive political environment, the same might befall Uganda. Let me also bring in Kakonge. Kakonge, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, Mr. Kakonge, you were the executive director of the Western Ankole Civil Society group, which was also shut down by the NGO Bureau, but you've largely cooperate. We want to know to get a clear account of what actually transpired. You were actually engaged in anti-corruption related activities, which you suspended. You cited an unfavorable political environment that was unfolding, meaning even before the NGO forum, NGO Bureau rather, could shut down your activities, you yourself, you had self-censored yourself because of the unfavorable political environment. Why? And
yeah, because I think, Romeo, because you see, the corrupt are very powerful, well oppressed. They have the resources and connections within government that they can also push back, especially when you raise the most serious issues. For the last 5 years or so, we have handled a number of corruption-related issues. One of them that resulted, for example, into a conviction. In March, we secured a conviction of a municipal treasurer who had stolen 104 million from the municipal accounts. And corruption court ordered him to refund the money and also sentenced him to a fine of 5 million. But the other time when the bureau said, now, they held the party in town to celebrate. Now, those same people go back to Kampala and say, no, these people should be closed because we are handling very serious matters that, affect their eating. And for them, they are not happy with it.
Yeah.
For me, I know doing governance work is very risky, especially work on corruption. It's very risky to personal and the entire organization, and we expect all these things to happen. But
does that mean that the most corrupt people, Kakonge, reside within government if they do not want to offer an oversight role when it comes to corruption activities in the community and in government itself? If they do not want you or adamant to let you go ahead with your activities, does that mean the most corrupt individuals in this country reside within our government?
Yes, because they form the biggest part of government. I think most people in this government are very corrupt, but we also have very good people in the government, because in our experience, there are those that have been willing to work with us to address some of these problems. And I think somehow, because for us here at the local level, we do not have so many bad people, because most of the things we address here are pertinent. They affect the larger population. And we have had a number of success stories here, very many success stories in our fight against corruption. We have been working with the Directorate of Ethics and Integrity, the Inspectorate of Government. The unfortunate bit is that when this pushback by government on our work came, they kept silent. They remained silent. They did not speak up, and they do not want to associate with you when there are problems like this. And for me, that is where the biggest problem is, that those who are very powerful speak. Those who are not powerful, they keep quiet because they think, their space is also getting squeezed. But let me tell you.
Yes, Kakonge.
For me, this strengthens us. This gives us more energy to continue working, because then we know what we are dealing with. What we are dealing with is not a simple men on the streets. These are very powerful people where we have to organize. Does government expect us to keep quiet? For example, when very many people are living in poverty, when there are poor health and education outcomes, when there is an increase in gender-based violence, do they
teenage pregnancies, early marriages, and so forth?
Do they expect us to keep quiet? Yesterday, Uganda Revenue sought the court and said, have you filed returns? Now I asked him, don't you know we are closed? He said, I'm not aware. So I said the government on one side wants money, wants to collect a tax. On the other side, they want to close you. So it's difficult to understand it. But then you pay this tax. I compute this tax in form of pay as you earn, in form of withholding tax and many other taxes that we pay. And then they are still not satisfied. But us as citizens, I think our duty and the duty we are going to be playing is to make sure that, first of all, we influence what they are doing. This is in Article 38.
Yeah.
This is in Article 38, which says people collectively through their leaders or civic organizations can influence the business that the government is involved in. But also, we'll make sure that we demand accountability. The other day, we were in Shema, if you, on NTV, these things were around, people were stealing the hot springs. We went there and defended the hot springs. And you know, these are natural resources that people enjoy. The local government was saying, no, you people, you have to pay money before you access. We said, no, these are natural resources that everyone has the right to. We've been in Sinjo. There's a lot of corruption there. And like I told you when I was starting at the beginning, you see this tool. This is a vuvuzela.
Corruption vuvuzela.
The vuvuzela has become a very powerful tool for local people here who are resisting against corruption. I hope people do not get more angrier that they will blow these vuvuzelas against their government. And it's very powerful because when you blow it, and I want to demonstrate it, if you blow it, you know there is a problem. And you know people are standing around.
Kakonge, of course, show us.
So that is how it is. And you see for us here what we do.
Yes, Kakonge.
Yeah, for us what we do is that as many citizens as we can get, we come up, we stand up, blow these vuvuzelas on government officials who are corrupt. So, I mean, it's...
Kakonge, it is unequivocally clear that you are not going to be silencing yourselves or any of the self-censorship that has taken center stage. But then I use the Western
Ankole Civil Society Forum. Let's use
the Western Ankole Civil Society Forum as an example. You had self-censored yourselves even before the NGO Bureau had actually suspended your activities. Are you worried that there are other NGOs within this country that might have self-censored themselves as a result of what is happening to other NGOs? They might not have been suspended, but since they saw the clampdown on other NGOs being suspended, they were like, you know what, we need to reduce or tone down on the criticism, tone down on the activities. Do you think we've created an environment where NGOs and other civil society actors self-censor themselves?
Actually, that's correct. Self-censorship is very high. There are even people who used to work with who tell us that those things you are doing now, for us, we are not going to be coming your way because we do not want to run into the risk of government closing our business. I think there are people who are still living in survival mode. Some of us do not live in survival mode. I know many NGOs which were doing anti-corruption work, and they said, we are going to stop that business because we know the risks associated with it are very high. And it is becoming a problem. Very many here, even in the region, people said we cannot speak, we cannot talk. Even in the country, there are people I was talking to across the country in several regions in networks that are like Western Ankole Civil Society Forum. They said now, with the challenges that you people are going through, we are going to slow down on what we are doing. We are not even here, by the way, let me tell you, even us here, there are things we said, okay, we can stop doing this, maybe this we can do, because the environment is so squeezed that sometimes you feel you are not going to get home and sleep and return back to work the next day alive.
That is all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kakonge Lee, the Executive Director, Western Ankole Civil Society Forum. They were shut down, but he says they are adamant to actually listen to that directive. They've continued with their civil society work, advancing the goals of the Ugandans. He has that vuvuzela in his hands. Let's talk about the remedies. Indeed. Let's talk about the remedies with Michael Aboneka. What remedies are there in the areas of litigation for my brothers and sisters within the civil society or NGOs?
Thank you, Romeo. And
recommendations.
I have enjoyed the discussion, and there are two things that I just want to quickly add a voice to. One is there's been this whole conversation about civic education. We all know that political education was banned. They no longer teach civics, and that was deliberate. And because of that, a magistrate and I went to court challenging government to translate the constitution, because it's supposed to translate them into all the local languages, to translate, teach them in schools, and also provide time on media to explain the rights of people. You can't be the same person saying you have refused to pay tax. The only right that this government emphasizes, an obligation for citizens, is that they have to pay tax. And URA is always making, these adverts and what have you. But how about the Bill of Rights? How about the other, rights? And yet, when you bring them before the magistrate, you're saying ignorance of law is no defense. And the same government hasn't translated. It is 2 years now. We are still waiting for the judgment, but hopefully it comes out. Kakonge and the colleagues have been talking much about social accountability. And I want to applaud Kakonge and the group. They have done many things, including saving a football pitch. Someone may look at that as a silly thing, but how many parks do we still have left? And those are spaces that are closing. If we want to have a match, just a match, where can we go? Those spaces are being closed up and buildings are coming up. So it is important to note that even as we talk about remedies, where do we go from here? This whole week I've been speaking to a number of CBOs and NGOs on issues of compliance and the rest. And actually I realized that there is a lot of illegal things happening. The districts have set their own fees for permits. They have set their own requirements for permits. And it is actually crazy out there. So for me, the remedy is one is that
to get ready.
First of all, let us do our job. What does your object? What do your objects say? Do your job. File your returns, because we can't run away from that. That is a fact as it is. But number two, seek remedy. If things are continue to be unchallenged, then we are setting a bad precedent. Even if the court doesn't agree with you, right now I'm even thinking there is no adjudication committee. I know some members of civil society went and met the minister. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so if that meeting doesn't give us the adjudication committee, what else can you do? Go to court, ask for mandamus, let the minister have an adjudication committee. And I think it is the same case we're having with the CCG over UCC. They don't have a tribunal in place. And therefore, that's why you saw the excesses of Mr. Mutavaz doing the job of the tribunal. So
I hear you.
Court is a good place to go, because one is you get a remedy, even if it is not in your favor, but you set precedent. The other avenue is that we need to work together collectively. This thing, the common saying that there was no one left for me. Even now, the so-called NGOs that are in service delivery, they are also being targeted. They thought that the target and the closure and the clampdown is only for those Kampala people who speak a lot of English and make a lot of noise like Sarah, But yet, they don't know that actually the closure of one space is a closure for the entire space, because it gives them actually a formula that we can close them and they keep quiet and life continues. So we need to work collectively on this matter, but also challenge all these processes, because until we challenge, then we won't have any basis of claiming legitimacy. We need to protect our space.
A concerted effort on all these stakeholders so that we can join hands and face out this problem. Let's also bring in Sophie Bukirwa Chagulanyi. Sophie, we are talking about what remedies there are to help us alleviate this challenge as far as the shrinking civic space is concerned in this country. Sophie, you have a lot of knowledge in the areas of accountability and governance. Help us come up with a few pointers on how best government can actually expedite a conducive working environment with these NGOs and members of civil society. Sophie?
I think for me, government needs to review. Hello?
Yes, your video is off, but then I can hear you. Go ahead. Your video is off, but then I can hear you.
Yes, I was saying that government needs to revise its perspectives on the role that civil society is playing in this country. Government views civil society from a security perspective and purely political perspective. But in that perspective, it is prevented from appreciating the other social and development aspects that comes with
switch on your camera too, Sophie.
In this country. If anything,
your video is off.
The biggest partner government has is actually civil society. Because with civil society, government is able to reach a larger part of the masses. With government alone, not reach the masses. Civil society is able to carry government's message to the people directly and allow government to be properly appreciated and really appreciated by the people. So government needs to cultivate efforts of growing a very functional partnership with civil society beyond looking at them as political contenders or security threats to government and any government that and any political party that is in running. And the other thing that government needs to appreciate is that civil society play a role that government will not be able to play in the now and in the hereafter. What do I mean? In the next 20 years, the role that the civil society has been played will not be played by any government. The kind of capacity that civil society has, as they are, can't be able to reach that capacity. So governments need to allow civil society to operate. They can continue oversighting them, but they should not restrict their operation because government is actually in this case. If citizens don't have the information, government is the first lot that would be benefiting if citizens had the information. So if citizens prevent civil society from passing on this information, it's on the losing end. So that revision of their perspective, civil society, and the role they play is actually key. If they are really, really rotten tomatoes within the lot of civil society, government an upper hand pick them up and not really trump up charges against people that don't have, where they even have the evidence. But if they are really there and to use it, you can actually clamp on them, use them, but be able to allow others to operate and be able to function in a manner that is in supportive of government's role, running the government, but also government's role in ensuring that citizens are governed properly.
All right, thank you very much, Sophie Chagulanyi. Sarah Bireete. Sarah Bireete, we are talking about remedies coming in. What perspective does the Center for Constitutional Governance hold on this particular subject? Recommendations on how to expedite a conducive working environment between civil society organizations and our central government?
Well, as a sector, we shall continue to engage in dialogue with the government, formal dialogue and the informal dialogue with the government and, inclusive of all concerned duty bearers. But also on issues where dialogue fails, then we shall engage in litigation. We go to court as a third arm of government, established, citizens need to underpin the fact that judiciary is the only permanent arm of government where people live on retirement. Parliament is renewed after every 5 years as well as executive. But judiciary does not come to anybody to renew their mandate once appointed. So judiciary must provide the required stability in governance. That's why they are permanent and pensionable. And they should serve the people as enshrined in Article 126 of the Constitution, that judicial power is derived from the people and must be exercised in the interest of the people at all times. So where dialogue fails, we shall resort to the permanent arm of government, which is judiciary.
All right, thank you very much, Sarah Bireete, the AD for the Center for Constitutional Governance. I also have the AD for the Center for the, AD for the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy. Charity, ever since they suspended your organization, I'm telling you, I've largely not even hosted you for a long time. You should come to morning at NTV and we talk about the continued work that you've been expediting. But largely, as the AD for the Center for the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy in Uganda, what recommendations do you have for us to create a conducive environment and also reduce the shrinking civic space? Your mic is muted. I can see it right here. It is muted. I can't hear Charity. Something has to be done. Charity, we'll get back to you. I don't know. I think government is in your connection. They don't want the world to hear what you have to say, but I'm sure you can hear me. That's a funny bit. Let me go to Kakonge Lee. But before I go to you, Kakonge Lee, let me go to Elliot. We haven't interacted with Elliot in quite a while now. Elliot Odizarwa. We are talking about recommendations in a little bit moving forward from you as the ED for the Women and Girl Child Development Association. What kind of recommendations do you have for us? Elliot?
Yeah, thank you so much, Romeo. I think I had already talked about the next step, and I still insist that civil society should come together to start organizing on civic education now than waiting for 2026.
We should start now.
Yes.
Using what? Because government is largely ensuring that the people with the tools do not operate.
There are different ways. Like the way we usually train. The way we usually train local councillors, that when you go for a burial, that's when you get space to have a microphone and speak. Civil society has to create space in different areas, and then
NMG is offering itself.
Yes.
We shall offer you a platform to continue actually disseminating this kind of information if government is clamping down on your work. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. So the way we have to do it again, we have to be smarter. There are smarter ways of doing these things. We can write, first of all, we can write our positions and continue sharing our positions with policymakers. And it shouldn't only be at national level, as Kakonge said. If you start from down, and as we said before, this is the work of citizens. And civil society organize NGOs, work with people, and those people are part of the citizens. And I think engaging them, we had some time back, I think if Sarah and Sophie remembers very well, we had a program that we're doing globally on citizen participation in local governance. And I think for me, organizing in a way, like the way Kakonge said, if I go to Kakonge's place and I really want to bring women together and speak to them, it is one of the ways that we may need to start talking about the issues that may affect us in 2026. We can still organize with churches. Churches are part of civil society.
Yeah.
If they have managed to pull up opening of the churches, then they should really pull up the issue of bringing the concerns of citizens.
When they end up going back to the lockdown, if they go political, government might also clamp down on them. Aren't you afraid even the religious institutions, if they do not focus on the Bible and teaching of the good word, yes, and revert to politics, the government might clamp down on them too, just like the NGOs.
Yeah, but again, Romeo, if I remember very well, the real definition of government and real definition of democracy, it goes back to the issue of creating space so that we can be able to engage.
All right.
But again, I love Somath. When I start saying I have to fight fear, then I love Somath Day when he says that government can decide to do what they want to do, or they do it or they don't do it.
All right.
But again, when I take back to the issue of, when I go back to the issue of what we stand for, we are standing out for equality. We are standing out to come out with the voices for the people. And the most important thing is for us, I think, to continue speaking to the constituencies that we work with.
Elliot Odizarwa, I'm afraid we've run out of time. Let's give Ms. Kakonge a few minutes to also let us understand what kind of recommendations there are from his organization so that we can remedy this very, very heinous problem. Kakonge, recommendations.
I have a few recommendations to make. First of all, is that as a sector, we need to stand together. Because if we don't come together and work in solidarity, things are going to be a bit hard. It's this time that we need to be one. We also need to profile the work we do and showcase it, the value that sector has, and let alone appreciate that our efforts.
I hope Charity is back on.
Efforts are very important. We should also stop working in silos, because working in small groups is a bit problematic. It is easier for government to target small people working individually than those who are working collectively. I think we need to work together. We also need to walk the talk. We must walk the talk, because one of the things that government blames us for is not being accountable. We do many things and we think we want to be free, we want to be independent, and we forget that the government exists and we them and when. And finally, dialogue. Even when we are at the lowest, we need to continue talking, because talking makes people get better. People will understand us better. People will want to. I know there are people who do not want to listen, but there are also good people who will want to listen to what we are saying. We have come a long way. I think we still can cultivate a good relationship and make our life better.
All right, Kakonge. Thank you very much, Sarah Bireete. I'm sure you're still with me as the ED for the Center for Constitutional Governance and the platform that actually hosted us on this webinar. Give us your last overall message going out to the global citizens who are watching.
Well, my last message is to the people of Uganda, as well as citizens of the world. Nations belong to the people. Even a definition of a country starts with the people and then the boundaries. If you have boundaries without citizens, you cannot call yourself a nation. You cannot even belong to the League of Nations. So Uganda cannot.
Charity, are you okay now? I hope Charity is okay now.
Unless the people known as Ugandans exist.
Yes,
our existence should not be merely biological. We must influence how we are governed at all times, even in difficult circumstances.
Charity Ahimbisibwe, are you there? Could we have your last parting shots? I pray your connection is now better. Charity, you're back. You're back.
Are you hearing me now?
I can. Go ahead. Recommendations. Yes, okay. Recommendations, Charity.
Okay. So my recommendations and parting shots will be only two things. Yeah. People have said we need to rebuild collective action, and it's true, because divided you fall, united you stand. So we must build collective actions, and they must also be strategic. Strategic in terms of who influences what. Right now, I am told the Attorney General, who is, what is his name again? I keep forgetting it. He's one of the strategic partners that CSOs could use right now. He has plugged his mouth comfortably into Kiriowa. Yes. Yeah. He has
oh geez, my network. No. She had some great pointers over there. You've frozen, unfortunately. Charity Ahimbisibwe.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. He has the president. So he would be such actors that we can work with to governance.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing that I was saying there, that we need strategic alliances with people who are heard by the government, and I've named one of them. Citizen trust. Okay, the trust levels of citizens have continued to dwindle, but also the trust levels in the government to citizens have also continue to dwindle. So we need to work on the trust.
The trust issue. All right, Ahimbisibwe says we need to work on the trust issue.
Yeah, both civil society, and citizens, and the government.
Charity Ahimbisibwe, the Executive Director for the Citizens Coalition for Electoral Democracy. Thank you very much. Sophie Bukirwa Chagulanyi, she is very well grounded in the sphere of accountability and governance. Well, thank you very much. And also Kakonge Lee, the ED for the Western Ankole Civil Society Forum. I see you, sir. Very, very energetic and outspoken. Sarah Bireete, the ED for the Citizens for the Center for Constitutional Governance.
I hope you hear me properly
to speak to us. Indeed. Oh, thank you very much for having participated. Sarah, thank you for having organized. We should actually put together another of these webinars, a series of these webinars to talk about this and so forth. What do you say, Sarah? The future of civil society.
Yes, we shall keep engaging with the people, because the most people we want to understand us very well are the citizens.
Oh, yeah.
Government knows what we do. They know that what they are saying about us are lies. So we want to get to the people and make sure that we move hand in hand with the people.
All right. Sarah Bireete, seek for the services of the NMG. As always, you can always call me, Romeo Busiku, and I'll be always there to actually engage you on these conversations. I'm always passionate about such topics. These global citizens have been watching, and they've taken note of all those recommendations. We should fight to actually counter the shrinking civic space right here in Uganda. You speak on behalf of the voiceless, and no one should get out of that, path. My name is Romeo Busiku. Thank you very much to all my panelists and all the participants on this webinar. Thank you very much for having participated. Have a blessed day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
All right. Bye, Charity, everyone. Bye, Sophie. Bye, Kakonge. And to you all. Indeed. Blessed day.
Blessed day, Romeo.
All right.